70% of kids by the age of 13 have quit organized sports completely, totally. 28% of kids above 6 years old are completely inactive. Do you know the Lewis Harris poll showed that 50% of American kids experienced their first major failure in life as a sports failure? We have this thing called organized sports, which is a lot of times, in many cases, taken the fun out of sports for a lot of kids. A study evaluated 150 different kids, and they asked them, what's fun about sports? What do you like about sports? You know, what are your things? And they identified 81 different factors, and winning was 48 on the list. It was 48th on the list. The kids didn't care about winning. The coaches care about winning. The moms and dads care about winning, but the kids don't care. The things they were cared about, that were high on the list, were positive team environment. You know, one of my kids had a team that they did really well, and they called themselves La Familia. They were a family, and the kids loved that. They loved positive coaching. Coaches are about driving them to be better and better and better. Not all the kids are going to become world-class athletes. You know, one of my kids, we raised 6 kids, and I wrote a book called Body, Mind, and Sport to try to sort of deal with this crazy, insane thing that we have where parents are screaming at kids on the sidelines. One time, a parent was actually screaming at my son in a soccer game. He was like 10 years old, to do this or do that better, and she was screaming at him. And that was clearly the beginning of the end of his soccer career. He was like, he was so humiliated, right? And with kids experience their first major failure in life as a sports failure, it's a very, very real thing. And we have to recognize that. You know, when we were kids younger, there was organized sports, but it wasn't that organized. It was just fun. It was play. Winning was sort of like a side effect, you know, if you got lucky, and it was, you know, but it wasn't only about winning. We didn't practice 3 to 4 to 5 times a week and push these kids to exhaustion. We didn't specialize the kids. They didn't become soccer players at 8 years old, and that's their career for the rest of their life. You know, you played a little sport here, a little sport there, or you did music, or you did dance, or you did whatever it is that filled you up, that was fun, that fit your needs. In Ayurveda, this is called your body type. You know, the President's Council of Fitness, you know, support has a certain test that you do to see if you're perfectly fit. To the climbing the ropes and doing the chin-ups and the sit-ups and all these things, which are really good for one of the Ayurvedic body types. The Pitta constitution always does well in those tests. But the Vata kids stink at it, and the Kapha kids stink at it, and so it's a point where they're actually completely humiliated. So they always schedule their dental visits and their orthodontic visits on the day they have gym class, because they don't really want to go to gym class, because they just get humiliated because they're not good enough to perform doing the sports that only one body type can do, which is that Pitta constitutional body type. I remember when I first wrote my book, Body, Mind, and Sport, I was doing some consultations with a private school, and we were starting to talk about this issue of kids dropping out of sports, hating exercise, you know, feeling like gym class was something they dreaded. You know, because if you can't climb the ropes, everybody can watch you not climb the ropes and fall down, right? It's like super humiliating. And so we were going to design a protocol, and we did a protocol for giving them kids exercises and activities that were more suited to their constitutional strengths versus only giving them a sport that was like, you know, that they had to do: football, baseball, basketball, all that kind of stuff. So as we were having these consultations, a woman came into the athletic director's office, and I happened to be there, and she came in tears, and this little girl was maybe 10 years old. She was a Kapha body type, easygoing, bigger, heavier framed, and she said that with tears in her eyes, she goes, "I just came back from running the mile for gym class, and you have to do it under 10 minutes to pass the class. That's what the President's Council says you have to do, and 50% of the kids can't do that." So she said, "I failed, and last year I failed, and I did it in the 12 minutes. This year I did it, and I trained, and this year I did it in 10 minutes and 30 seconds, and I still failed the class." And she said, "I'm so you know, tired and stressed and embarrassed by this." She asked the director, said, "Can I never go to gym class again? Can I just not ever have to do this again? Because I just can't do it." And she was just blown away. And it was a perfect example of how these kids just pay such a big price just to compete and fit in and to perform for no reason. And so we ended up implementing this program in the school, and about 6 months or so later, or maybe a year later, I forget, it's many years ago, I came back and I was sitting in the office, and this little girl, I saw her in the hall, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh, Dr. Douillard." She ran over to me, and she gave me a big hug, and I was like, she goes, I go, "How are you doing?" She goes, "I'm doing great." I go, "What's going on?" And she goes, "Well, this is so moving for me because it's such an amazing story." She goes, "I just came back from the regional championships as a race walker," true story. And she said, and because that's something that her constitutional type can do, her body type can do it. She's super kapha and has great endurance, and she can go forever. And she said, "And I just joined the basketball team." And I was like, "What? Really? That is so cool." She goes, "Yeah, the Vata and the Pitta kids, they dribble and they pass." She goes, "I get rebounds." And it was like changed her whole world because she had a place on the court. You know, it was really neat. In that same school, I coached helped coach, implement these program principles on the soccer team. And a lot of the principles are also about nose breathing. The research I did back in the early days was breathing through your nose. We compared nose breathing versus mouth breathing during exercise. And when people nose breathe, their brain went into an alpha state. They went into a meditative calm. That runner's high zone experience where my best race was my easiest race was what I was really trying to prove. And we published those studies. And they ended up in my book, Body, Mind, and Sport. And so part of nose breathing is being in the process, not being goal-oriented, not being only about the winning of the game, but really, being within yourself, you know what I mean? And competing with, not trying to destroy the opposition, but competing with yourself to be better and to improve your skills and to refine those skills is a self-improvement kind of thing. And to find that inner exposure of calm and not let the competition distract you from your own inner place. And everybody knows you shoot a basketball, for a foul shot when nobody's looking, it's easy. You do it in front of 10,000 or 20,000. When I worked in the New Jersey Nets, it was 30, 40, 50,000 people they were shooting foul shots in front of, and they were getting super stressed out about it. So it was a really huge deal. So this team was like all about the process, not about the goal. And the best team in the division came in and played this team, and they were like really good. And as our kids were playing, this is a long story, but as the kids were playing, our kids were having really a great time because they were in the process, but they were getting destroyed. They were getting beaten goal after goal after goal. They were clearly going to lose this match. And the other team was getting so frustrated because they were beating them, destroying them in terms of winning. But our guys were having a blast and having so much fun that this is, again, a hard to believe true story. But at the end of the match, the team that won and destroyed our guys because they were loving the process so much were so frustrated that they didn't beat these kids down, that they actually challenged our team to a rematch. To do what? Beat them again? It didn't make any sense, but that was the beauty of finding that inner competition, using the distractions of the competitive world to find how you can coordinate your inner composure and calm with the dynamic activity, like a hurricane. The bigger the calm, the more powerful the wind. It's probably a bad analogy these days, but it is what we can do. We can experience something Ayurveda calls the coexistence of opposites, the dynamic activity and the calm at the same time. It's a law of nature. The sun has planets spinning around it. Atoms have nuclei with particles spinning around it. We can be calm, and that calm supports the function of the body in a very dynamic way, as opposed to being outside of yourself. And these days we have so many distractions to pull us outside of ourselves. It's very hard for kids not to become affected by that outward distraction, that demand to win by their coaches. And I highly recommend that you read this article at LifeSpa.com, where I talk about the research, and you can go and look at those studies. You can also take a look at my book at Body, Mind, and Sport, where I wrote all about this in detail and talked about the nose breathing research and techniques for kids to bring the fun back into their exercise again. So check out all this information at LifeSpa.com. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter and become a member of our family and enjoy some of the research we put out every week, combining ancient medical wisdom with modern science. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard.